And welcome again. My name is Malcolm Ross, and you are at the Appian 21.4 Product Announcement Webinar. Thank you for joining us once again. Today we're going to be covering all the features and capabilities released with the latest release 21.4 of Appian. But before we jump into that content, I'd like to cover a few significant updates, and the first of which is the return of an in-person Appian World event. Now, we are looking forward to having a safe return to basically a in-person as well as hybrid digital event on April 25th to 27th in 2022 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So recognize a lot of people might have trouble traveling all the way to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we will be holding a full digital event as well. But we really look forward to seeing a lot of people in person at the Diplomat Beach Resort. And of course, you can learn more at appianworld.com. Hope to see you there. But of course, some of the significant updates may be covered there are one of those investments in process mining that Appian recently made. So if you didn't hear, Appian acquired a process mining company named Lana Labs in August of 2021. We are busily working behind the scenes, integrating that product to the larger stack to deliver that vision of automated discovery of your processes and your infrastructure, and then identification of workflow opportunities that lead directly to automation and greater efficiency. Having that great loop of intelligence that discovers opportunities, automates them, and then continuously improves those processes over time. So looking forward to announcing the integrated product at Appian World in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in April. Also, update on the Appian Portals initiative. So we announced this at Appian World 2021, which was the beta release of our Appian Portals initiative. Now, Portals is a new method for publishing interfaces as microservices that run independently of the larger Appian platform and service anonymous access for cloud scale B2C type use cases. So you can use all the power of a low-code design experience to build dynamic user experiences with integrations and business rules, as you see down below. We'd like to thank everyone for your interest and participation in the beta program. The beta program is now full, but if you'd like to receive updates about the beta program, email us at portalbeta@appian.com. And of course, if you're looking forward to the GA version of Appian Portals, please stay tuned to our next product release in 2022, as well as our Appian World event coming up in April in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to submit a Gartner Peer Insights review. We really appreciate those 5-star reviews. And if you would like to take advantage of that opportunity, we are offering either a $25 gift card or a $25 donation to a charity if you submit a review. So I'll leave these links up at the end of the webinar as well, but if you take a chance to snapshot that, we really appreciate any of those 5-star reviews that you submit at Gartner Peer Insights. There's no better opinion than the opinion of our developer community and our customers and partners who use Appian every day to accomplish their goals. And let's jump into Appian 21.4. This is the final release of 2021. Expect the next release to be GA in March of 2022. This release will be GA on November 12th of 2021. And today we are going to be covering the low-code interfaces, data, RPA, intelligent document processing, development, admin cloud support, community, and app market features, all included with a 21.4 release, GA next week on November 12th. And again, on that November 12th date, if you are a on-premise or self-managed customer, you'll be able to download the software and install it yourself on that date. If you are a cloud-based customer, you'll be able to start scheduling your individual upgrades after November 12th to upgrade to the latest 21.4 release. So let's jump right into our low-code interface capabilities introduced with Appian 21.4. And the first of which always I like to start with is mobile. And of course, we're really proud to announce the GA version of our dynamic offline mobile capabilities. Now, we introduced this as a beta at Appian World 2021. We've been working with a number of great customers to validate the features for their use cases and are happy to now bring it forward as a GA solution. And this simply allows you to support dynamic sale evaluation logic while offline. So also using our low-code, easy-to-build dynamic user experiences in our interface designer that you can build navigation wizards, field and form validations, cascading dropdowns, conditional displays, or more type of dynamic logic you might want to create for an offline user. Now, the first question you might have is, well, how do I create these great offline experiences? And of course, you want to go into the Appian Interface Designer, and you'll see a checkbox there inside the individual interfaces says Make Available Offline. Now, that's the first step you want to do in order to start building an offline form. The next thing you want to be aware of is that offline is supported for tasks and actions. So tasks, of course, are process tasks that are going to be assigned to a user in the middle of a process. They can take those offline with dynamic evaluation logic and all the data necessary, as well as actions, which are start forms to processes. Those are also available in an offline state. Let's go ahead and see actually this in action of how we actually would go about building an offline form inside the Appian product. Now I have this application for a home inspection app. I'm going to go to my interface and open up this in the Appian Interface Designer. Now as I go into the Interface Designer, of course it's a web-based design console. To make it more mobile-centric, I'm going to go to my iPhone type mobile preview. And here we see what looks like a relatively static form. We actually have a lot of dynamic logic, such as I want to have maybe a regex expression to validate telephone numbers, ensure the proper information is captured there. So I can see I have, well, that must be a 10-digit number. As well as I capture information like my name, I'm going to type it right here, and hit the next button. We have then also maybe additional information I want to capture through dynamic interactions, maybe such as the inspector. Now the inspector, this list of users, this could be coming from a relational database, a query from a list of users in a group, any number of dynamic logic or data areas or external web service as well. Now, in addition, I have all sorts of other types of data that's going to be presented to me as I select individual controls. So if I want to have a move in, I want to move in and move something for kitchen and bedroom. And as I choose kitchen and bedroom, I have then a number of dynamic checkboxes I need to enable for what I'm actually moving for this customer. And as I next validate that logic, as well as capture any rich media inside this interface as well. So if I need to maybe draw a signature inside of here, I can also draw that signature and upload that right there as well. Now, this can all work just as you see it offline, but how do you build this offline is first, as I mentioned before, you want to go to that properties of the interface. And inside the properties, the first thing you want to do is check that box for make available offline for this and any subform components of the entire interface. Next, I have lots of data I need to work with here. I have maybe record data, relational databases, backend web services. The key to this is working with these data in local variables. So if I can track this, and if I go up to the overall form layout, and then go up a level to my local variable declarations, I can see I have a number of variables declared here, as well as each of these variables is populating data from basically a business rule. These business rules can be integration services to web services. They can be database queries, whatever I want to fetch that data. The key is I want to map that data or into a local variable. Once it's stored inside a local variable using the local variables function, you'll now be cached offline so users can interact with that data and have dynamic logic working with that data. Now, the mobile application for Appian will automatically refresh that data on a regular basis, ensuring they have the latest and greatest data before they go offline. They don't need to preemptively sync that data. Appian automatically does that behind the scenes to ensure that at any point in time they can go offline and ensure they have the latest current data for those forms. Now, as you're working with these local variables, these will be used obviously into the dynamic logic of each of these forms, such as I have a drop-down for state. Well, I want to populate that from a specific set of information. So here I have a constant that has all my states populated inside of. So this is how you do it. It's basically just like you build any other dynamic experience inside the Appian Interface Designer, but it is now available in a fully offline state. So going back to our presentation, let's talk about some of those other user experience updates with 21.4. The next of which is the JAWS screen reader for accessibility. Now this JAWS screen reader is for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines to ensure people who have difficulty seeing can use a screen reader technology to automatically read the Appian interface to them to make it easier to navigate. Now with Appian 21.4, we now support JAWS with Chrome and JAWS with Microsoft Edge to the list of recommended browsers and screen reader combinations for people who require that type of technology. In addition, we also introduced a number of updates for cards. Specifically, first is the new card choice component. The card choice component offers a visually engaging alternative to radio buttons, checkboxes, drop-down controls where I want to select maybe one or many items. So instead of having maybe a plain list of radio buttons, I can have this rich list of iconic graphics, text, and other information for a user to simply select. This also works great on mobile experiences because it offers a large click target for maybe iPads or iPhones or Android devices, making it easy to interact with on a touchscreen. So as I use these card choice components, then they basically select from a selection of these, and they'll save into a common variable inside behind the system, just like you do with like maybe a drop-down or multi-drop-down control. Now, on top of this, the card choice component in the design time experience is also easily populated from backend data sources. So in this example, I drag and drop a card choice component and then map the data to a record data source to maybe show me a list of all my customers and just then select one of those customers from this rich list. As you can see, it's very easy now to select, get that list of dynamic lists from backend database, dynamically generate a card for each of those customers, add maybe additional data such as a tier of each customer, and then have a simple selector to save that whatever customers they happen to choose into a specific variable. Now, on top of that, the cards also offer a new decorative card bar. As you add a decorative card bar, this allows you to call attention to specific cards or maybe convey additional information, such as a positive indicator, negative indicator, a warning indicator, as we see here. Now, this, of course, is a subtle styling control, adds a little bit of color. You do have total hexadecimal control over what color you want to apply, so maybe it's a branding element as well, but it adds a little bit more splash and color, of course, to your card layouts. And finally, with card layouts, we also offer new margin spacing parameters. So this is including a margin above and margin below parameter on the card layout, allowing you to control the padding in the above and below each of these elements. You'll see the selection offers a none, even less, less, standard, more, or even more to control the number of pixels you want to lay out between each cards as you control these in a more complex layout configuration. Now, we also introduced two new interface patterns to the Appian 21.4. The first of which is the tab cards, which uses that same card layout control to lay out information across multiple tabs. And then second one is the navigation lightweight, which is a lighter weight of having maybe a master detail navigation. So we see that lightweight one right here highlighted where I have a left-hand navigation for each of the elements. And then as I click on each element, it'll show a different page right here. And then up top, I see the tab layout and the same concept. As I click on different tabs, that will offer different pages. It allows you to break out content across multiple pages inside a single interface. And then finally, with our Appian interface updates, this is one of the most exciting ones, is an update to our sites environment. Sites now allows you to jump to edit interfaces. So let's actually see this in action to explain it. I'm going to jump over to an example site here. And inside this example site, I have an order fulfillment application for my Valo. This actually is one of the standard apps that comes with the Appian Community Edition version. Now, if you are a designer or system administrator, in the bottom right corner, you're going to see this new option right here. So you'll see that little icon, Show Objects. As I click on Show Objects, it suddenly gives me the same type of highlighting I have in the Interface Designer, where I can hover over and see the individual elements from the end user experience. So again, if I'm working with the end user, want to debug something from the end user experience and want to say, well, what actually does that refer to? You know, there's something wrong with this grid. I want to modify that grid. I simply select the grid just like this, choose Open, and it's going to jump right to the Interface Designer to go ahead and edit that right from the end user experience. A great productivity tool to rapidly kind of see things and then edit them immediately from the interface I was visualizing them in. So let's jump over to that narrow desktop view instead of the mobile view. So of course, another addition to this is, let's go over to my home inspection app instead. In this example, instead of having a general interface, I have a start form. Now, when I click on that same little show objects option, I click right here, I have an additional option to say, don't just show the interface, but also maybe show the process model. So I know that this interface is correlated to start a process, so I can actually just jump right to that process from the inner site's environment to go ahead and start editing that inside the user experience. So really great productivity tool for rapidly editing your interfaces from a site. So moving on, talk a little bit more about low-code data. So low-code data is our continued focus on a perennial problem that a lot of our customers have had is making sure data behind the scenes is optimized for the intended use. So even though I'm maybe connecting to multiple data sources, and then on top of those data sources, I want to query them, I want to search them, I want to sort them, I want to report on them, those data sources aren't necessarily designed for the way I want to build an application. So by using Appian's low-code data architecture, we allow you to synchronize that data into the Appian product, build a composite view of that data from multiple data sources, and Appian automatically tunes and optimizes the data based on the intended design experience that you define inside Appian. So some of the things that we're introducing inside 21.4 to help with that is first on that sync architecture. Now, if you ever have a failed sync, Appian skips failed. Well, if a sync fails on your record, then Appian can now be configured to use the data from the last successful sync. So what this means is syncing data means that I'm going to regularly check my source of truth data and make sure I have the latest and greatest information. If that source of truth data system is not available, it will fail, and then Appian will simply continue to allow users to interact with the application based on the last successful sync. Now, in addition, another case of failure we have is when I need to do batch syncs. Sometimes I might have a data I want to synchronize. Maybe it has 1,000,000 rows of data, but I can only synchronize 1,000 rows at a time. So I need to run 1,000 iterations of that maybe web service call in order to get the whole data set in Appian. Now, while I'm doing all these consecutive web service calls to synchronize the data, I could have a failure. Maybe the internet drops, maybe the web service becomes unavailable. What Appian will do in case of this, if you're in the middle of a batch sync, there's a failure, we'll automatically retry on that failure. And if it's successful, the sync will continue as normal and continue like nothing happened at all. Now, in case of additional failures, if a sync does fail or is skipped, the record type and system administrator will receive an email alert with the details about the sync failure. So it's important, even if there is a failure in a batch or in a regular sync, that we give you the details to properly debug and understand what went wrong. Was the internet down? Was the service not available? Or was maybe some other warning message being presented to the user that needs to be understood? So you'll get an email alert, as well as you can always go directly into the sync management console and see the link there, failed or skipped, and then simply click on that to get more information about that failure. Now, one of the big advantages of also synchronizing data and building this composite data source is also applying custom fields on top of those to perform calculations or aggregations. So now when you're doing an aggregation, you can also filter the aggregated data. So in this example, I'm creating an aggregation record field based on a customer, which is connected to my orders. Now, what I want to do is generate a custom field that sums the number of completed orders for my customer view. So here I'm going to automatically say create an aggregate related record field, custom field, choose the order IDs, give me the amount of those, and then filter it by only where the status equals sales order. Now, this is going to ensure that I don't include maybe the in-process orders, just the ones that are completed, and that will properly give me an aggregation there on that new filtering capability. Now, in addition, we also, as we build these record lists for you from these data, we allow you to apply search. There's now additional configurations on that search to first enable or disable a search box, so you can then turn that off entirely. And then second, limit the search to select fields. So if you have, for example, a description field with lots of text, well, I might want to not include that in the search because I could be searching for a keyword, but it's maybe picking up on some text in the description. Maybe it's giving what we would call a false positive in the search results. So by limiting the search results, I can limit that to specific fields, which I'm sure users will more typically search upon. In addition, you can also update the placeholder text of the search box, giving the user an indication what types of searches are valid based on the fields that you selected inside the configuration here. We've also improved the record view configuration to control the record title. So this specifically allows you to set the record title using a simple guided configuration. Prior to Appian 21.4, this is only available as an expression. So now if you choose the guided configuration, instead of an expression, you have a simple drop-down control to select a specific field you want to represent the record title as users view that data in a record view. Of course, you still do have the expressions option right there, so you can always go back and do a complex expression to maybe do styling or maybe compound sentences. Also, when you're in the record list view, we also now include the previously introduced and more advanced and accessible date picker. So this is specifically for date range pickers inside the record list view. So this new accessible date range picker offers some additional controls, such as a drop-down control for the month and year, making it easier to navigate to specific dates in the past or future. Now, of course, as well, this is a record configuration. So all you do is enable this specific filter on your record list view. Maybe you've done this already, and this new date picker will automatically apply. There's nothing for you to do as a designer to implement this inside the Appian product. In addition, on our records sorting charts by any field, this allows our designers to sort charts by directly referencing a record field instead of an alias, as well as a sort by fields not directly referenced in the chart. So to maybe give an example about this, in a chart that counts the number of cases that have a status, say open, in progress, or close, sorting by the chart's primary grouping will display only the case priority on alphabetical order. So I might not see the ordering of my specific columns in this example. That doesn't really make sense with the intent of the data. So instead, you can now sort the chart by the status, such as status ID field, which might be 1, 2, 3, which is not referenced in the chart because I'm just using the name, but now the chart will properly organize and sort the information by saying order in progress closed instead of a different order. In addition to our records configurations, we also now need to show access labels with no data, specifically on things like line charts that are going to use date or times on the x-axis. Even if no date is associated with that time interval, it will now show those inside the overall line chart. So again, for example, you might create a line chart that shows the number of support cases submitted each day, but even on days when there are no cases submitted, to more accurately show case trends, you can now enable this parameter on bar charts, column charts, or line charts to show that information so you get the accurate trend of how data actually flowed or number of cases each day, even if the cases were 0. And finally, with our records and low-code data, we also improve the record relationship picker to be up to 3 times faster. So the record relationship picker is used specifically to navigate the complex metadata relationships you set up in records as you navigate across data sources. So in this case, in this example, I see a list of my customers and I'm referencing the order. And as I go to the order, I see the metadata for the order as well as it's related to a customer. Navigating this now is up to 3 times faster inside things like the Appian Interface Designer when building a new interface on this specific record relationship. Moving on to our low-code RPA capabilities. RPA is a really fast-growing space for us as far as our customer adoption, so we're happy to announce a number of significant features. The first of which is Edge with IE compatibility mode. Now, a lot of our customers are using Internet Explorer, the old version of Internet Explorer, to basically access legacy web applications that maybe are still around, but you can now use robotic process automations in Appian to orchestrate across them. So what this allows you to do is specifically activate that browser in IE mode so that you can be compatible with the old versions of those web applications that you might be using or need to use robotic process automations against. In addition, this is a pretty significant one that we now also support robotic sub-processes. Now, robotic sub-processes specifically are processes completely independent of each other, but can now be referenced to each other. Now, before Appian 21.4, we did support what we call robotic process sections. Sections are simply kind of a sub-process within a parent process, but it's all part of the same process. It's just a section of a process. A sub-process is a completely reusable and independent process across a system, now supported with Appian RPA. And it works just like the Appian process modeler in referencing a sub-process. There's a sub-process action, execute robotic sub-process, and I map my input and output variables between the two systems. Now, how this actually executes on a robotic process automation is that the sub-process will execute on the same resource as the parent process. So, for example, I might have like a login routine for SAP that I always use. Well, I can create that once as a robotic sub-process and then allow other processes to refer it to easily control the login to SAP and then do whatever additional action they need in SAP after I do it. So I don't need to rebuild that login action. I simply have that as a sub-process shared across many other robotic processes. Now, as you run these processes, we also enhance the debugging mode to easily set breakpoints, track variables, disable actions, or execute specific actions while executing a robotic process in debug mode. So again, when you hit run, you have an option there to choose debug mode. This will activate the screen that you see before you right now, which allow you to set breakpoints, disable, enable actions, skip actions, run from a specific action. Really useful if you have a very long robotic process. Maybe you want to skip some setup things and then go straight to the middle of the routine. Makes it a little bit more efficient to quickly debug and understand what's going on inside your processes. Now, we also, for the Appian RPA recorder, which is still in preview mode, not GA yet, but it is part of the Appian RPA product, we introduced the ability to dynamically create variables from the recorder. So in the screenshot example we see here, I want to fetch a specific, say, stock price, but maybe when I'm doing the recorder, I don't necessarily know what I want to capture yet. So on the fly from the recorder, I can choose to dynamically create a process variable, and it'll automatically create those variables when I create the entire robotic process automation. In addition, that recorder also will automatically now detect usernames and password fields. So why this is important is because when we detect a specific field like a username or password, we want to make sure you're properly using the credential store to manage those credentials. You don't want to be storing those credentials in clear text or passing them through in variables. The proper way is we have a secure credential store in Appian. You manage those credentials and map them to it. So whenever we detect that you're working with a username field, the information, as you see right here, will say the value won't be saved. Configure the credential manually in the workflow designer after you generate this robotic process automation. And finally, while you're inside the Appian RPA recorder, we also have the ability to navigate the recording on the right-hand side here. And when I select specific elements, it will automatically highlight the element that that maps to or corresponds to. So here I can see I clicked on a specific element. As I click on that, you can say, oh, it's mapping to this area right here. So it makes it more intuitive as I'm navigating the individual recorded actions to understand what part of the web page in this example was actually being referenced when the action was recorded. So nice little productivity update. Now, the most significant thing you'll see in the new Appian RPA console is the brand new designer experience, which also is in preview mode. Really excited to get this in GA in 2022. So what we're doing is we're going to be deprecating next year the BPMN-based process modeler and going to what we call a list view interfaces or a list view robotic process automation design environment, which looks a lot like, say, the interface designer or other designers in Appian. So from this, you can see it has a palette of all the robotic actions I can do. On the right-hand side, you see the property configuration for each action. And then I simply drag and drop these into a list view environment to define the order and sequence of activities that need to occur. Now, this still supports things like conditionals and looping controls, and we're going to talk about that looping control in a minute. But we also allow you to do record from the new robotic process designer as well. So if you're inside this new list view designer, you can hit start recording right there. It'll do the same thing as far as capture the recording and automatically generate that robotic process for you. And then finally, as I mentioned, there's also a new action group looping. So if I have a section or elements I want to loop to iterate over something, I can simply put it inside this loop control and iterate over that inside the Appian environment. So actually take a look at some of this in action by doing some dynamic designs. So again, this is all pre-GA, so this is all preview mode, but it is available in Appian 21.4 for you to start using and enjoying to increase your productivity. So first thing let's talk about is how do I build a robotic process? So here I'm in the Appian RPA design console. I'm going to go ahead and say create new process right here. And if you want to use the new design console, you want to make sure you choose a blank one right here. So I'm going to choose blank and say demo example. It's going to be the name. My permissions configuration is simply going to say the permissions of this process need to correspond to the permissions of the resources to designate which robotic resource can actually run that process. As I hit create, that's going to create that repository space for storing this process definition, as well as give me a download if I want to do additional Java development, kind of the source definition for that application as well if I want to extend it in Java at all. So there's that zip. And now it's launching the new Appian RPA designer. So of course, you can always iterate back to the previous designer. Up here, you can say, go right back to the old design view if you choose to. Let's go and explore this one. And for this one, I'm going to go to a website called the Federal Register. So federalregister.gov. So let's go and grab that URL. Then I'm going to go back to my RPA design console here and say start new recording. And let's do a little kind of recording and get some information from this website. So let's go ahead and say I want to navigate to federalregister.gov. This is a list of federal contracts of the United States government, here in the United States, of course. As I choose to start that recording, the robotic process recorder, and launch the web browser to that designated website for the Federal Register. So here it is on my other screen. So there it is. So open up the browser. Now I can start doing the robotic recording. So if I navigate the website, you can see it's selecting individual fields. So I see a very clear area of what I may be clicking on. If I click on that find area, I'm just going to search for the word Appian, type in the word Appian, hit the search button, and then I'm going to get some information here. So let's say, well, I want to select maybe some fields. And let's go ahead and choose maybe this action field. So I want to select, say, get data here. I want the number of items that were returned. That get attributes the item count, and I want to save that into a new variable. So I'll go ahead and choose, say, define the variable item count, and that's going to be a number. Hit create, and there we go. So just like that, I was able to dynamically create the variable on the fly while I was searching. Now, after I get that item count, I want to do something else. I'm going to say, well, I know I have 17 items here that are being returned. Well, I'd love to automatically get the URL addresses for all those items. So let's go to that first item right here, choose actions, again, get data. Now I'm getting the data for that agency information. You can see the value that's going to return is that URL. Now to get this, I want to maybe use instead the CSS selector, which is a different way of identifying the same information. And I want the CSS selector because it's going to give me something which is the item number right here, which is the child number. Now as I go to this, I want to go ahead and save this as, say, my fed reg URLs. That's going to be of type text, and it's going to be multiple items. Hit create, and I'm done recording. Let's say get items is going to be my section, add section, just like this. So I did my recording. I went to the Federal Register website. I searched for the word Appian. That automatically found all the Appian 17 listings dynamically, and then it's going to automatically then get all the URLs for me. But if you know, the issue here is I only clicked on the first item. So this hypertext reference right here is only getting that first child. So I need to do a few things. I need to automatically loop around this. Luckily, I get the item count first, so I can introduce a loop control right here, then add this inside there. So now I'm going to loop over this item here. So the loop, though, I want to repeat a specific number of times, which of course is my item count. So I can go to my variable here, item count, hit save, and now I go to my specific item. I want to take that CSS information, go into my expression editor again, and let's say, well, here I want to put this in quotes. So it's a text string in the quote here, and then I want to introduce, instead of the number 1, I wanted to get my looping index. Now, if you've ever worked with the for each loop inside Appian, or you might be familiar with that FV bang indicator. So whenever you want to work with a loop, you want to type in FV bang, and this is going to give you the properties of the loop, such as the index. Is it the first? Is it the last? What is the item count? Here I want to get the index of that looping control. So it's going to get me the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 17, and iterate through the CSS to get each item. Go ahead and hit save just like this. And then instead of adding that to or storing it as Federal Registers each time, I want to append it. So each time I get a new item from my loop, I want to append it to my Federal Reg URLs process variable. So let's go ahead just like this and hit save and give it a run. So let's go ahead and execute. We'll choose my Mac machine here to run it on. I'll go ahead and capture screenshots just so I can see what happened and hit test just like this. So just like this, it's going to get the items inside that section and now start launching the browser. Now let's see, it's going to fire off the browser. So again, my hands are not on the keyboard. And now it should launch up to the Federal Register website, just like I defined. It's going to type in the word Appian as we defined into the search window, hit the search button, identify the 17 items, and now start iterating through. So if I actually go back here, we should be able to see those loops start to occur. So now it's looping through the CSS, getting each item, and I can see it grow dynamically as it runs right here as well. So great way to debug it, understand it, and see the execution and what's happening behind the scenes as well. So really nice feature. I said great way to do looping controls and great way to do design. Much more intuitive also is that new design experience that we introduced right here to lay out inside the list view to easily see the sequence of actions that will occur in a robotic process automation. So anyways, going back, last thing to note on Appian RPA that if you didn't know, all of our customers, especially the cloud customers, have access to Appian RPA. Appian RPA, we are giving it away for free with one robotic resource license. And of course, if you're interested in it as a larger implementation, encourage you to reach out to your account executives to add that to your overall Appian environment. And final thing on Appian RPA is that it also comes with the Robotic Workforce Manager tool. The Robotic Workforce Manager in 21.4 now includes enhanced queue reporting with the aggregated data of high-level trend and visualizations. Robotic Workforce Manager, of course, doesn't just work on Appian RPA, but it also works across Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, UiPath as a consolidated dashboard for controlling all your bot resources in your enterprise. And the new queue visualizations give you the information such as a queue item result details, how many are generating exceptions versus not inside that queue, and how many items were processed, as you can see in this screenshot. Moving on to our intelligent document processing capabilities, this is some pretty exciting announcements around Appian RPA is that Appian now provides native AI-based document extraction out of the box and natively in the Appian stack. So if you're familiar with Appian Intelligent Document Processing, we introduced this last year. We introduced this in partnership with Google using a lot of Google's AI services. So we had several customers sign up for that service, but many other customers said, we want to keep all of our data inside Appian Cloud because Appian is who we trust with that data. So now with our native AI services, when you enable Appian as the extraction vendor, all the data will reside inside the cloud architecture and never leave the Appian environment to do the AI-based document extraction. Now, in addition, with this release with 21.4, all of our cloud customers who are comply with the security regulations we'll talk about in a second can process 20,000 pages per month at no cost and no additional contracts required. So in your normal upgrade, when you upgrade to 21.4, you'll be able to do up to 20,000 pages per month using our Appian local native AI services that will be automatically enabled. Now, who is this for example, specifically? So our document extraction features are now SOC 2 compliant. Now, SOC 2 is our IT audit standard for how we maintain Appian Cloud. So any customer that only requires SOC 2 compliancy and operates Appian in the Appian Cloud environment will receive the native AI-based document extraction for free at 20,000 pages per month with the Appian 21.4 release. Now, if you do require either HIPAA or PCI DSS, those are advanced security configurations for U.S. healthcare patient information or secure credit card transaction processing, PCI DSS, you will have that feature as a toggle feature on your cloud site. So you can choose whether the data you're doing inside your environment requires PCI or not. If it doesn't, then you can turn it on and do basically that document processing using your native AI inside the system. Now, if you are a on-premise self-managed customer or a FedRAMP customer, it will be disabled for now. We look forward to introducing these features in 2022 to advance the AI services for document extraction for all of our customers next year. Now, in addition, Appian's native AI capabilities for document processing now support checkbox detection with mapping to Boolean data points. So this means that if I have an unstructured, like a scanned PDF image, and I have checkboxes there, in this example, like existing vendor, certified, ELA, we will dynamically detect the information using, character and optical recognition, and then map that to the individual Boolean fields automatically inside the system. In addition, many of the content you have in these unstructured scanned PDFs might have table structure which are adjoined or adjacent to each other. So Appian's intelligent document processing more consistently detects adjacent tables as separate tables of data, improving extraction accuracy with this 21.4 release. And in addition, these individual tables can have multiple lines of content in an individual row. Appian now also more intelligently detects these multi-lines, rows, and tables, again improving extraction accuracy as part of 21.4. Now again, Appian IDP is a free part of the product for all of our SOC 2 compliant cloud customers. Look forward to getting feedback and your usage on it as we roll that out. Next in our low-code development capabilities, the first thing you'll probably notice as you spin up 21.4 is some subtle changes to the product illustrations. We're always trying to keep the product looking fresh and current to today's style. But more importantly, we have a number of expression updates as well to make it easier to work with data sets and do logic. The first is one of my favorites is A-bang keys. So I do this a lot where I'm working with a metadata structures, either in the form of a map, a record, a CDT, a data dictionary, and I want to understand what is that metadata structure of these elements. So if you use the A-bang keys and simply give it a value of either like a record or a CDT, it will give back to you the structure of that metadata. So here you can see in the result, it's giving me that, hey, if I go value of A-bang keys value, giving my customer data type, well, here's the data type has ID, name, tier, phone, created on, address, updated on, updated by. So great information to basically, if you want to do like dynamic generation of content, dynamic generation of interfaces based on detecting what the fields are of a record, you can now do that using A-bang keys. Also, it's been a common for our customers to write expressions that do null or empty checks. That's no longer necessary in Appian 21.4. There's two new expressions that will do that for you. First is null or empty. Checks for null and empty lists with a single function, returns true if a null or empty is detected. And then second is not null or empty, which is the inverse, of course, to validate the presence of a value. So again, you no longer need to write expressions that check for this. Automatically comes out of the box in this out-of-the-box function they can use across any data set. And also no longer need to load the personalization functions to have that does group exist capability. So now natively in Appian 21.4, we have the A-bang does group exist function. Just simply give it a group ID to check the validity of a group existing before doing an interaction with it. So you might be, say, doing like a smart service interaction to add a user to a group. Well, I want to make sure that group exists before I try to do that transaction to prevent a failure. So I can use the A-bang does group exist before I actually run that transaction as to write the, say, new user to the group. Now, while you're writing expressions, we also make it easier to have syntax guidance in expressions. So Appian now alerts you when your expressions contain invalid keyword syntax or more keyword arguments or more keywords than arguments. So again, here we see an example where I typed in data colon, then data colon. I actually wrote the keyword parameter for this function twice. Will automatically detect those types of errors and give you a highlighting there to automatically correct it in real time as you edit. Now, the biggest expression update is something that I'm sure everyone's been looking forward to, which is the modern full-featured expression editor is now part of the Appian Process Modeler. So if you've been working with the Appian Process Modeler for a long time, you're probably cheering right now that it's always had this relatively pared down expression editing experience, which didn't have all the features of the other expression editor areas. Now, all those features such as the wizard, the syntax checking, the lookups of functions, all those are now natively part inside the Process Modeler, giving you full parity of expression editing in Appian Process Modeler with the rest of the product as well. So we really look forward to introducing that to enhance their process modeling experience. Now, when it comes to application definitions, we now allow you to store application documentation with your overall application definition. So it's a property of the application. So this is good for, say, capturing things like requirement documents, as well as links to third-party websites, maybe like a Jira ticket with a user story, or as well like spreadsheets, Word documents, all associated with defining the content I want to build inside the application. So all these can now be stored with the application definition as well as transferred as I migrate that application between environments. The documentation can be deployed across environments as well as a part of the application definition. When you go to create these applications as well, you can also auto-create groups and folders. So this easily creates standard groups and folders during a new application. It's probably the most common thing you do. Whenever I build a new application from scratch, the typical thing I do is, well, I build the app, and then I want to build a process model folder, a rule folder, a knowledge store, a knowledge base store to store all the content as well. Now simply check that box. It will all be created for you automatically. And also, as you set that default user group and administrator group, you'll also have an option now to configure those inside the application properties. Now, the application properties screen that we see here, you want to configure these two group structures because whenever I create a new object inside of this group, it'll default the security settings to be these two elements. These people will be able to administer it. These people will be able to use this specific interface, process things I create. Now, one of the things we introduced in an earlier version of Appian was the ability to also add object prefixes. These object prefixes will automatically be applied whenever I create new objects in the context of an application. Now, you can also, with 21.4, search by that prefix to find specific applications in their application properties. When it comes to Microsoft Excel, we did an enhancement to the exporting to Microsoft Excel. This specifically applies to two smart services, the Export Data Store Entity to Excel and the Export Process Report to Excel. These have been enhanced to better maintain formatting of the template Excel sheet. So you can specify a starting cell for the output to begin, and the cells above will maintain the formatting such as alignment, font, border, fill, and more. So again, oftentimes I have a stylized Excel sheet that I want to now populate from data I've captured in Appian. So now you can preserve that styling and then specify the point where you want to start inserting the Appian data to run the smart service to automatically build that stylized Microsoft Excel sheet. For our DevSecOps features, when you manually import a package, we now run these asynchronously in 21.4. The status of manual imports can now be tracked in the deployments view, so we won't show you the status after I do the import action. It will give you a link instead to go to the deployments view, and there you can monitor the status. Sometimes that can take maybe a couple minutes while you're waiting for maybe a large application to deploy. And when it comes to application definitions, we also include now application configurations in the package. These are things like prefixes, documentation, post-deployment processes. Without having deployed the entire application, you can include these specific elements or properties of the application in a package update when I do iterative updates to overall application definition. You can also now add and manage plugins for packages. So again, packages are a subset of an application when I want to deploy smaller changes between two environments. A package here with 21.4 can now include specific references to just a few plugins. So if I maybe did a few updates to a plugin, I just want to push this plugin in a package, I can now include those just like any other design object. And finally, for our low-code development, when it comes to integrations, we now allow you to enable for HTTP and OpenAPI integrations, a trace log and an HTTP request response log to facilitate integration debugging. Now, this is going to give you much more detail inside the log files when I run these executions. So you want to make sure that you enable this only on your dev and test environments, especially when I enable a log of the HTTP request and response. You might be either passing clear text password and username authentication information or PII information about your customers in those requests and response. So typically we don't store that stuff in logs, but you can now optionally enable it inside the admin console to give you that enhanced logging and debugging to see what's going on behind the scenes. So again, recommend that you only enable this feature on your dev and test environments where maybe you do not have PII data, but need that extra element of debugging control. And then when you move into production, disable that feature to ensure none of this secure information is stored inside log files. Now, administration cloud support features with Appian 21.4, the most significant of which is support for the Amazon Aurora database as a data source for Appian. Now, all of our Appian cloud customers will continue to receive MariaDB as their default database, but you can attach your Appian system to any other data source that we support. And now with Appian 21.4, that also includes Amazon Aurora. So this supports a database with high performance, scalability, availability, durability, high security, and of course, compliance and compatibility with MySQL and PostgreSQL. So hope you enjoy that as a new option for storing and persisting data from Appian. Now with the MariaDB architecture that we do ship, we also ship with a PHP MyAdmin console for administering that cloud database. With this 21.4 release, we're introducing two new store procedures as part of that database, which are the Appian process get full process list store procedure and the Appian process kill process store procedure. These allow you to discover all the running queries and processes inside your database architecture, which you might have a long running query that's tying up resources. So you can use the kill process by giving it the thread ID to kill specific queries that might be tying up your overall database performance. Now, this applies to our self-managed on-premise customers who want to achieve a low recovery failover across geographically separated data centers with replication of their internal messaging service. So the internal messaging service in Appian is specifically powered by Zookeeper and Kafka. This architecture is basically the internal messaging service of the product. So to ensure that you replicating the information effectively, we use Mirror Maker to basically replicate this information to an entirely different data center. So in this case, you might want to set up one data center in the east coast of your country, another data center in the west coast of your country. If the east coast data center fails, then the Mirror Maker architecture will ensure that data has been replicated from the messaging services to the other data center, giving you a very low recovery point. So you're only going to lose maybe a very small set of data when I spin up that backup data center in the alternative location. So again, this only applies to our self-managed customers. If you want this for our cloud customers, we already offer this as part of our overall high availability configurations with the enhanced data performance. Now, also for our self-managed customers, we've deprecated deploying Appian in an individual Docker container, replaced it with deploying Appian in a Kubernetes operator for non-production systems. So essentially what's happening is the Appian product architecture is being decomposed into individual microservices and containers. It's increasingly important now that you use Kubernetes to orchestrate the spin up of those containers. Now, our cloud customers are many of them are already operating under this architecture. So this applies to self-managed customers who want to do this, currently still just for non-production systems. Kubernetes operator will orchestrate the standing up and maintaining of all Appian components, as well as start or stop components in the correct order, and it runs constantly behind the scenes to correct the state of components if issues occur. So again, Kubernetes is the only method, again, for deploying Appian in a container model to ensure you have this proper orchestration of the individual microservice containers. Now, again, this is for non-production. If you are a self-managed on-premise customer, highly encourage that you start using this for your dev and test environment, because you can probably think about what's coming soon next year. We will be rolling this out eventually for our production usage case as well, for using Kubernetes for our self-managed on-premise customers to manage your own environment. So you can get some early experience doing this with your dev and test environments with the 21.4 release. And finally, with our community and app market updates, we're encouraging everyone to always go to community.appian.com and register to get their own personal community edition. Community edition, of course, is a free forever version of the Appian product. Always upgrade to the latest version to basically play with and learn the Appian platform. You can get your community edition at any time, and of course you could spin it up, shut it down anytime as well with your own self-service management console. With community edition, we introduced a few new things. The new SpaceX sample tutorial application allows you to build a data-centric app from scratch in 30 minutes using the external web service and the new Appian Record Sync architecture. So if you haven't used Appian Record Sync, go check out the Appian Community Edition SpaceX tutorial. It's a great introduction to connecting to a third-party web service and synchronizing, working with that data in a synced architecture, then building experiences around it. Same thing when it comes to building reports. We released a new build reports from records tutorial on docs.appian.com, which is supported by the Appian Retail application, a free, fully configured application available in Appian Community Edition. To show you how fast and easy to build insightful reports, we create a series of common reporting patterns that can be configured with little to no code. You can build and test all these patterns in Appian Community Edition by copying and pasting recipes from the docs tutorial to instantly see the benefits of using our low-code data architecture to build reports in Appian. Finally, if you saw those announcements with 22 or 21.2, We, of course, deprecated the A-score certifications with our new certification program. If you haven't learned about this yet, I encourage you to go to community.appian.com, click on the Learn tab to learn more about the examination process. We are continuing to honor all of our A scores until they expire, so I encourage you to start scheduling those upgraded exams today to get the latest certification. And of course, congratulations to all who've already gone through the process on achieving your certification. And finally, also, thank you for all the submissions on the Appian app market. We had a lot of great submissions from tools like PDFtron, which is a great redaction and PDF manipulation tool for embedding inside the Appian UI, Outlook emails and MS Graph email pullers, a download document connected system, lots of great features to enhance the overall design experience, both from plugins to also pre-built applications on the Appian app market. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the Appian 21.4 product webinar. As a reminder, I encourage you to take down that URL and appreciate those 5-star reviews. Again, we are giving away $25 gift cards. Anyone who submits those reviews, that gift card actually is delivered by Gartner directly, so they're also encouraging these reviews on their site as well. Again, appreciate those 5-star reviews for Appian on Gartner Peer Insights. I'd like to thank everyone again for attending the Appian 21.4 product announcement webinar. Look forward to seeing you next year at our Appian 22.1 product webinar, and of course at Appian World in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, April 25th to 27th. You can check out more information at appianworld.com. Thank you and have a great day.